I'll be honest, I don't like ranking things. I think our cultural obsession with ranking and lists is ultimately futile in any attempt to determine what is the best. When it comes to art, there will never be a definitive best. Different works will always have unique attributes that make them good, and goodness in art is subjective anyway. But when it comes to the Broadway musical, I think it could be a worthwhile exercise to identify one example that embodies everything that a great musical can be. Musical theater is such a young art form. The musical, as we know it, really only came to be in the 20th century. It is an art form that is still trying to define itself, I would say more so than cinema or television, which have both become quite comfortable with what they are. Musical theater, on the other hand, has proven to be experimental over time, existing on a line between pop culture and high art. Sure, there are plenty of musicals that contently embody whatever form and style were the norm at the time of their inception, but the greatest musicals have reshaped what musical theater is and can be. I therefore think it could be helpful to identify a Broadway musical that best defines what musical theater is. So, contrary to what the title of this video states, I won't really be trying to claim that one Broadway musical is the best or the greatest. What I'm trying to do is find that one exemplary musical, where if some alien life form came to planet Earth and asked us to explain the bizarre genre that is musical theater, we could use this one musical to demonstrate the potential of how great musical theater can be. To reach my conclusion, I will look for the following criteria: a strong opening, iconic characters, song and dance that develop a story, innovativeness, and ability to stand the test of time. Allow me to briefly justify my criteria. Anyone who has been to a live performance of a musical knows the excitement that swells just before the show starts. It's a feeling that is unmatched at the cinema or sports arena. The shared experience of looking at an empty or masked stage, knowing that something exciting is soon going to happen there, is a special feeling that the greatest musicals hold sacred. They need to deliver on those feelings of anticipation with an opening that continues to build excitement for the musical that is to come. That doesn't necessarily mean an up-tempo opening number, though. Look to the simplicity of the opening of Oklahoma, or Fiddler on the Roof. In many ways, the opening establishes the precedent for what the musical will be. One aspect of musical theater that has contributed to its enduring success is its ability to create celebrities. The stars of Broadway make up a significant portion of musical theater history, and many of those stars owe their celebrity to the characters that they played in musicals. In the greatest musicals, the characters have a life of their own. While different stars bring something different to their portrayals, it is ultimately the iconic characters that audiences love and remember. So, the best musicals should provide iconic characters that can both make Broadway stars and allow Broadway stars to thrive. At its core, musical theater is storytelling through song and dance. So the best musicals don't contain musical numbers or dance interludes that are superfluous. Song and dance should be the central mode of storytelling. That's not to say that the book isn't necessary. It is. But the greatest musical wouldn't rely too heavily on spoken dialogue or non-choreographed staging, as it is song and dance that makes the musical. Look, for example, at Hello, Dolly, a great musical that would certainly be a contender for my selection. But it has a little too much residue from the play on which it is based. Much of the storytelling in Dolly takes place outside of song and dance. And then there's musicals like Anything Goes, in which the songs and dances are present but are interspersed throughout the story without really doing anything to develop it. Note that I am looking for song and dance that develops the story, and not necessarily a plot. Plot is only one component of the story. But a musical's song and dance should develop the story being told, and not be secondary to it. Note also that I am looking for both song and dance. The synthesis of these art forms embodies the diverging artistic traditions that musical theater is rooted in. It wouldn't be fair to say that a musical that prioritizes song over dance, or dance over song, or one over the other is really the best. The best Broadway musical would be one that brought something new to the table. As I said before, the best musicals have shaped what musical theater is. This criterion puts the earliest musicals at a disadvantage, as they needed to establish the form that subsequent artists were able to challenge. This doesn't mean that these early musicals weren't important, it just means that they couldn't possibly encapsulate everything that the evolved musical has come to represent. Meanwhile, this criterion puts newer musicals at a disadvantage. As with most things, the greatness of a Broadway musical should be judged by its ability to persist over time. Musicals like Hamilton, while clearly innovative, have not had a chance to demonstrate a lasting impact on musical theater. Meanwhile, other musicals have needed to be tweaked in subsequent revivals and adaptations. The best Broadway musical would be one that was perfect in its original form. So there's my criteria. Now, before I get to the big reveal, I have two honorable mentions. The first is a chorus line. A chorus line combines music and dance in a way that few other musicals do, because dancing is such a central part of the story. It provides a memorable opening. 5, 6, 7, 8! Its story is innovative in the sense that it uses a traditional musical theater form to tell the not-so-glamorous stories of Broadway performers. Instead of the traditional Broadway star, a chorus line presents an ensemble of characters that ultimately camouflage together in the finale that has become one of Broadway's most iconic images. But it is that very attribute that causes me not to select a chorus line, as the ensemble is an important Broadway entity, but so is the headliner. My second honorable mention is The Lion King. I could make a whole video on this musical alone. All I'll say here is this. Julie Taymor created a work of art in The Lion King that was so innovative that it created a new type of entertainment. No Disney musical, or any other musical, since has come close to the type of show that Lion King is. I think this show helped inspire a Broadway revolution that is still taking place, so it wouldn't be fair to say that The Lion King represents what we know musical theater to be. I think The Lion King is almost something else entirely. So then, what is my choice for the best Broadway musical of all time? Fiddler on the Roof. This show embodies everything that a great musical can be. It was perfect in its original run, and continues to be perfect today. Of course, it gives us one of the most famous opening numbers of all time.
Tradition!
Tradition tells us everything we need to know about the show's theme. Not only is the opening number about tradition, but it has also become tradition. Everyone knows Jerome Robbins' famous circle choreography. No production of the show, whether it be a Broadway revival or a community theater, could ever deviate from Robbins' choreography because it is such an integral part of the show. The choreography incorporates folk imagery, just as the music includes klezmer influences. Song and dance are bound together in Fiddler on the Roof, and they both develop the story. Even the songs that seem to bear little significance to the plot contribute to the overall story. For example, Matchmaker does not advance the plot, but it does establish that the sister characters are steeped in the tradition of arranged marriages. Every song in Fiddler contributes to the story's development. But what about those less memorable songs? Sure, they're in there, like Now I Have Everything at the top of Act 2.
Now I have everything, Not only everything, I have a little bit more.
Bet some of you forgot that one. But even this song serves a purpose. Note that it is the first romantic song in the show to place love outside of a religious tradition. The earlier Miracle of Miracles, between Muddle and Zeitel, attributes those lovers' union to the will of God. If we view each daughter as a progression, we can see how Perchik and Huddle are a further step away from tradition. The dances in Fiddler also tell the story, and not only in the traditional folk forms that they integrate. The Havala ballet sequence uses dance to tell the story of how Tevia's daughters leave the tradition. Robin's choreography returns to the opening image of the circle at the end of the show, when the villagers gradually leave the circle, visually representing the social disintegration of community and tradition that occurred when Jews were exiled in Imperial Russia. The show, of course, gives us the famous character of Tevye, which Zero Mostel first made famous in the original production, to be followed by Topol, who would go on to portray the character in over 3,500 performances, more than any other actor. And he had plenty of opportunity to play the part. Fiddler has been revived on Broadway 5 times. That's not to mention the many West End productions, other international productions, and the recent off-Broadway Yiddish adaptation. Why does this show continue to resonate with so many people? For starters, Fiddler was the first time many people saw themselves reflected on stage. The Jewish population has always made up a significant portion of the Broadway audience, but Fiddler on the Roof was the first popular Broadway musical to depict specifically Jewish stories and tradition, and it was a huge success. That type of representation was a risk for the show's creators, who were concerned that the show might be too Jewish. But the show proved to be a favorite among all audiences, perhaps because of its universal themes. Generation gaps were a hot-button issue throughout the 1960s and at the time of Fiddler's premiere. Maybe the original Broadway production's audiences saw some of their own generational conflicts unfolding on the stage as they watched Tevye's daughters rebel against Anna Tevka's tradition of arranged marriages. As Tevye says, "It's a new world. Love." Tevye struggles with the new ways of his daughters that he knows are right, while still clinging to the tradition that holds his community together. It's an incredibly complex conflict. Fiddler proved that musical comedy could deal with such rich thematic content, and, moreover, used song and dance to tell the story in a way that no other medium could. Fiddler on the Roof is the ideal Broadway musical. As the art form continues to adapt and paradigms shift, Fiddler will remain the ultimate example of all that 20th century Broadway musical theater could ever hope to be.